When people talk about empathy, it often feels like a very abstract concept. Something as vague as empathy doesn't always feel like a very helpful tool. Luckily, there is a pretty simple formula to help us foster and practice empathy. We call this the empathy equation. Here's the equation: identities plus experiences plus circumstances equals understanding. To put it simply, based on who you are, what you've been through, and what's going on right now, the things you are doing and saying are understandable. Let's take a deeper look at each piece of the equation, starting with identities. In part, identities are our demographics. The different dimensions of your diversity are a part of your identity. Think of things like race, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation. Identities can also include important relationships like being a mother or a father. It can include where you were born, what languages you speak, or what you do for a living. I found that a lot of teachers identify very strongly with their career. Being a teacher is a very important identity for a lot of people in our profession. Like most people, you have more than one identity. You can be a teacher, and a mother, and a wife. And your behavior can look different depending on what identity you have in the moment. Our identities are core to who we are, and entirely unique for every person. Different dimensions of diversity can have different weights based on how important that identity is to us. Let's move on to the next piece of our equation: experiences. Our experiences are the sum total of everything we've been through, and the experiences we've had shape us in profound ways. Some people experienced trauma, while others experienced safety. Some people grew up wealthy, while others experienced poverty. Some people grew up in a different part of the country or a different part of the world with entirely different customs. Family, grief, love, education, jobs, travel. Some experiences are so significant that they change who we are and how we see the world. Negative experiences in particular can cause us to react to the world with fear or anger. I may not be reacting to you necessarily. I might be reacting because I was abused by someone in my past. If I've been hurt, humiliated, taken advantage of, or made to feel powerless in the past, it is very understandable that I could bring that trauma with me into a future interaction, especially if an authority figure or a power dynamic in our interaction is reminding me of my past. It might even be subconscious, so I may not even realize why I'm reacting so strongly. We don't always know the specific details of one another's experiences, but those experiences are impacting our interactions anyway. Sometimes we just have to trust that the way someone is acting in the moment is understandable because of their experiences. In other situations, it can be appropriate to ask people about their stories. The more we learn about one another, the better able we will be to understand them and empathize with them. The last piece of our equation is circumstances. The circumstances are all the things that we are currently dealing with. These can be nice, like a good hair day, or bad, like a global pandemic. Much like experiences, we don't always know what other people are going through. Maybe I'm struggling financially, or my marriage is falling apart. Maybe I'm dealing with a health problem or an addiction. People have a limited capacity to deal with stress in their lives, and something that might not seem like a big deal for you could be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back for me. When working with students, parents, or colleagues, it is important to remember that they all have rich, complicated, and nuanced personal lives. If a student is struggling with getting their homework done, it might mean that their circumstances are not great at home. If a parent is frustrated about coming into school for a meeting, it might mean that they are missing work, which could lead to financial hardship for their family. So let's look at the whole equation again. Based on who you are, your identities and demographics, what you've been through, the experiences you've had in your life, and what's going on right now, your current and often complex personal circumstances, the things you are doing and saying are understandable. Your feelings are valid. The nice thing about this equation is that it remains true even if you don't know all of the variables. You may not know what's going on in someone else's life, or how their past might be influencing their behavior, but you can rest assured that their actions are understandable based on their lives. This doesn't mean that we have to always agree with each other. Their actions might be harmful to themselves or others, but we can address those behaviors from a standpoint of empathy rather than blame. Empathy is particularly relevant when we talk about diversity or culturally responsive relationships, because the more our life looks and feels different from another person's life, the harder it is to fill in the variables in this equation. That makes it harder to empathize with people who seem different to us. This means we sometimes have to do more work to understand people. The good news is that empathy is like a muscle. The more you practice it, the easier it gets.